The first scroll of the book of Samuel, chapter 14. Here now, verses 1 through 23. One day, Johnathan, the son of Saul, said to the young man who carried his armor, "Come, let us go over to the Philistine garrison on the other side." But he didn't tell his father. Saul was staying on the outskirts of Gibeah under the pomegranate tree that is at Migron. The troops were with him. There were about 600 men, along with Ahijah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the priest of the Lord in Shiloh, carrying an ephod. Now, the people did not know that Johnathan had gone. In the pass by which Johnathan tried to go over to the Philistine garrison, there was a rocky crag on one side and a rocky crag on the other. The name of the one was Bozez, and the name of the other Sheneh. One crag rose on the north in front of Mishmash, and the other on the south in front of Geba. Johnathan said to the young man who carried his armor, "Come, let's go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will act for us. For nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few." His armor-bearer said to him, "Do all that your mind inclines to. I am with you. As your mind is, so is mine." Then Johnathan said, "Now we will cross over to those men, and we will show ourselves to them. And if they say to us, 'Wait until we come to you,' then we will stand still in our place, and we will not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' then we will go up, for the Lord has given them into our hand. That will be the sign for us." So both of them showed themselves to the garrison of the Philistines, and the Philistines said, "Look, Hebrews are coming out of the holes where they have hidden themselves." The men of the garrison hailed Johnathan and his armor-bearer, saying, "Come up to us, and we will show you something." Johnathan said to his armor-bearer, "Come after me, for the Lord has given them into the hand of Israel." Then Johnathan climbed up on his hands and his feet, with his armor-bearer following after him. And the Philistines fell before Johnathan, and his armor-bearer coming after him. His armor-bearer coming after him killed them. In that first slaughter, Johnathan and his armor-bearer killed about 20 men within an area about half a furlong long in an acre of land. There was panic in the camp, in the field, and among the people. The garrison and even the raiders trembled. The earth quaked, and it became a very great panic. Saul's lookouts in Gibeah of Benjamin were watching as the multitude was surging back and forth. And then Saul said to the troops that were with him, "Call the roll and see who's gone from us." And when they had called the roll, Johnathan and his armor-bearer were not there. Saul said to Ahijah, "Bring the ark of God here." For at the time, the ark of God went with the Israelites. While Saul was talking to a priest, the tumult in the camp of the Philistines increased more and more. And Saul said to the priest, "Withdraw your hand." Then Saul and all the people who were with him rallied and went into battle. And every sword was against the other, so that there was very great confusion. Now the Hebrews, who previously had been with the Philistines, had gone up with them into the camp, turned and joined the Israelites who were with Saul and Johnathan. Likewise, when all the Israelites who had gone into hiding in the hill country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines were fleeing, they too followed closely after them in the battle. So the Lord gave Israel the victory that day. This is the word of the Lord. So, this is an often forgotten passage. This isn't one of the passages that you've probably heard 100 sermons on before. It's not one of those that pastors repeat every year, but it's a very important passage to me. And I feel like it's going to be a very important passage to this congregation for such a time as this. What's going on is that, in the whole book of Samuel, what we have is there's a prophet named Eli, and his sons don't do a very good job of being prophets. They're compromised. The way they lead Israel is based on what's good for them and not what God instructs or what's good for Israel. Meanwhile, there's this prophet named Samuel who's actually trying to do a good job. This story takes place after Eli's death, when the sons of Eli are in control, and it is disaster for Israel. In fact, it gets to a point where the Philistines not only are in control of all of Israel at Shiloh, but that no one in Israel has a sword except for the king and his son, Johnathan. The Philistines have controlled the means of production. They've made it so that Israel can't do anything without Philistine approval. And so it's a shadow government, if anything. It's just a desperate, desperate time for the people of Israel when no righteous men are in power at all. And sometimes I relate to that kind of feeling, like I'm standing between two rocky crags, one named Bojesh and one named Shinar, between a rock and a hard place, like we're in a time of desperation. I wonder if you might relate to that feeling. It's not that you have to. If you're not, I'm glad of it. But I wonder if some of us feel that way a little bit about where this church is. We're dealing with some hard transitions coming up, with the loss of the Robinson family as they go off, and we're excited for them as they're blessed to new directions, but that's a loss for us. Even with the rummage sale, which was a success, but which was a success of selling off some things that were important parts of our past and our history, and we've had to make some hard decisions to say, we don't need these anymore. That's not who we are anymore. We've kind of could feel like our swords are gone, right? These tools of ministry that we've used at this church in the past, they aren't here anymore. There could be some desperation. Now, there might not be, again, and I'm not trying to encourage the desperation, but if it was felt, I wouldn't blame you. If it's not at the church, it certainly happens somewhere in your personal life. Some times when you don't know if the money is going to stretch, and job insecurity has caused problems, and times when you realize that your body isn't capable of the same things it used to be capable of, and moments of fear, moments of need. How do we respond as a people? How do we respond as people of the book who study the Bible and seek its guidance when we feel trapped? When we feel like nothing is going right and we do not know what to do? I believe this passage answers that question. And I love the way it answers that question. I love the bluntness of it, how real it is. This bit of 1 Samuel, it just feels like real life to me. If you look at a book like Genesis, right, where the stories you're hearing are stories about extraordinary people from an extraordinary period of history, right? We're ignoring the normal people in most of the world and paying attention only to the very, very special people, it can get harder to relate, and sometimes we can relate to the ideas and the concepts more than the actual lives of the people. But in this passage, all of the special people are busy, right? Like, David has been anointed king of Israel, but he's off shepherding sheep. Saul is over at his camp. He's not doing anything, and he would have been special if only he were special. And we're left with, like, the minor characters. What do normal people do? People like you, people like me, people like Johnathan, when they feel hopeless. Well, Johnathan, and I love the way he begins in the passage. Just one day, Johnathan, just on a whim, decides, you know what maybe we should do with these Philistines? It seems like they're a problem. You want to beat them? Let's just beat them. What if we beat them? The passage presents itself like that. It's just like, what? One day, Johnathan was like, I've got a sword. Why don't I just, defeat all the people that are bothering us? This could be good. And he has no permission. He has an ambition without permission. The text goes to pains to inform us of how kind of ludicrous it is that Johnathan doesn't prepare in any way, shape, or form. He doesn't check with the king, right? The king is over at the camp, and it explicitly tells us he doesn't check with Saul. And by the way, it might be one thing if, you can't get an audience with the king, but in addition to not checking with the king, by not checking with Saul, he also does not check with his dad. Saul's his dad. So he doesn't mention that to anybody. In addition to that, there is Ahijah over there, the priest of God, the son of Phinehas, right? The person who you would normally check with to figure out God's blessing on a thing. He doesn't need to check with him either, right? He's just like, I don't know, maybe, but I'm going to go try to beat some Philistines. Finally, and this is the most extreme reality of this, is it says, as he's describing him, that Ichabod's brother was carrying an ephod. And if you're maybe not as familiar with your Old Testament theology and the story as it goes through the Old Testament, the ephod, and then later it reveals the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of God, was there at the camp, and that was a thing that you would use. It was like a breastplate, and they had them during that period of the people of Israel to determine who God wanted you to attack, what the will of God was for the direction of the army. It would kind of give either a left or a right, or it had these various gemstones on it, and it was a way to hear from God. So in addition to not checking with the king and not checking with the prophet, he really doesn't even check with God about whether or not this is the kind of thing that he should do. He just decides to. He just up and decides to. And that's how stuff gets done, is people do stuff. Did you know that? I've thought about writing a book, right? How to do something. I think a lot of people have trouble with doing things. And so the book would be called How to Do Something, and you'd open it up, and on the inside it would say, Step 1, do something. That's how to do something. If you really want to do a thing, you got to do a thing. But what we want to do instead, we, the people, we scheming swindlers, what our impulses lead us to do is a whole bunch of other things before the thing. When we know that there's something that needs to be done, when we know it's the kind of thing that God would like, We instead are like, okay, but I'm gonna pray about it for 10 years until like a light shines from the heavens that says, now is the time, right? Or we check with the king and with the prophet and with our dad and with the finances, and we get some money and we start a GoFundMe campaign, and there needs to be a marketing person in charge, and we do all of the things before the thing. And it's not that any of those things are bad, right? It's just that they're not the work that we're set to do. We're doing things other than what we're trying to accomplish. And often, very often, we get so good at thinking of things to do other than accomplish the task we want accomplished that we never actually get around to the task. Because if we do enough preparation, we'll find something else that'll create a problem, and then we'll deal with that problem, and we'll develop the skill of procrastination. And then things don't get done. I wonder what the thing is for you. Johnathan wants to rout out the Philistine garrison. What do you want to do? I don't think it's nothing. I think there's something in your heart, something on your mind, something you see in the world that you wish was different. Something you see in this community, in College Park or in College Park Presbyterian Church, that you wish was different, or something about yourself. I know for myself, I just got back from a cruise. I wish there was something different about my weight. What do you wish someone would do for you? Have you tried doing it? Whatever that thing is that you wish. Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. Whatever the thing you wish would happen, have you tried just doing it? Just, you be that person. Because if you have tried doing it and it did not work, then I understand. Then I have some compassion over that feeling, over that need, over that problem. And then I want to get behind you, and I want to work with you, and I want to talk about stuff. Because once you've tried it and it didn't work, there's all sorts of stuff to talk about, right? Then we can talk about why it didn't work and what you learned from it and what you would need to do different next time you try it, and what you needed that you didn't have that made it not work, and how we get the thing that you need that you didn't have. But if you've never tried to do the thing, then I have to ask what you're waiting for. Well, I need to do this other bit first. Well, how do you know? How do you know you need to do something else first if you've never tried it? The way we learn these things, the way we learn about the prerequisites, is through failure, not through inaction. You have to fail before you know. How can you know what you need before you attempt a thing if you haven't even attempted to attempt it yet? And this is true in all of life, but I think I tend to think of things in terms of church context. I mean, that's just who I am. That's the air that I breathe, and that's connected to a lot of what I worry about. So I think about that Bible study that you wish existed, the sort of Bible study you've always wanted to have, or that mission project, that mission trip to the people that you care deeply about, or that prayer group that you've wanted to start, any ambition that you have. When I think about what I want to see at this church, I do a thought experiment. I like to ask myself, what would I do, what would I create here if I had 50 people who I knew would come regularly to every instance of the event I threw, and I had a leader on payroll who could take care of all the details. What kind of thing then would I start? If I had all of those things just handed to me. And then I ask, okay, if that's my idea, what do I need to change about it? How do I scale it down to the size if I have just an armor bearer? If I've got just one devoted follower, one person who's behind me, who's got my back, who'll encourage me when I get discouraged, is that enough to do that thing that I want? And what would be different about it to start at that size and grow to the 50-person and a leader on payroll size? And that's the trick that I've been using for a long time. It's not a special pastor trick. It's been from long before I was a pastor that I'd ask this question: what do I want to create? What do I want to do for Jesus today? Because actually asking that, how do I scale it down to just the size of one armor bearer question, makes things a lot easier. You think that you can't start until you get all of the support and all of the funding and all of the organization, but that actually makes it a lot harder to organize larger groups. I mean, if I had the 50 people, there'd be a lot more work that I'd have to do. It's more expensive. I need more space to fit them all. I probably need more food. They're going to want to eat at some point. If I've just got one person coming, we can meet in my car on the way to McDonald's. It's just easier. And the stakes are really low. If I fail, it's okay. Only one person's disappointed. Well, two, me, I'd be disappointed. Churches, instead, so often they teach the opposite of this. They teach the opposite of you can do it. Go and do something. God will get behind you if it's the thing God wants. And the reason we do it is because leaders are selfish and defensive. And leaders want to lead. They want power. They want control. And so they want you asking them for permission. And so churches teach us things like wait upon the Lord. Right? Just wait upon the Lord. Wait for God. And we tell a lot of stories like Gideon's fleece or Moses' burning bush about these reluctant prophets who don't want to take action. But y'all, when you read the Bible, those prophets were not being good examples. They were wrong. Moses was being weak when he said, God, I'm not a good enough speaker. Gideon was being weak when he said to God, okay, wait, but what if the fleece is wet and the ground is dry? I mean, these are people that are disobeying God, and God has grace with them, and God works with them, but that's not a model of how we're supposed to be. When the psalmist says, wait upon the Lord, that's an image of being ready. That's an image of having your sword high in the sky, ready for an attack in any direction. That's what it means to wait, right? That's where we get the term waiter, right? A waiter in an old manor house was supposed to be a person who sits and is ready for you, the master, the lord of the manor, to finish eating and then rushes in and meets any need as soon as it arrives. The word is kaveh, and it's in the PL part of speech in Hebrew. It means to wait eagerly and readily, looking for the opening. It is the exact opposite of try not to act. Try not to do anything too soon. It says, you're ready to pounce, you're waiting. And I was once that way. I once had that mindset, had that teaching that I had swallowed, that the way to follow God is to stand in inaction until the right action presents itself. I remember at the end of college, I felt like I'd studied all of my life for something that I hadn't done yet, that I hadn't started. I felt like this adulthood thing that all my life had been leading up to it. And then I found out, by the way, that I didn't graduate college on time. I had to take an extra year, and it was just like my whole life had been delayed. And I'd spent, 20 years just in a holding pattern. And that was the first time I encountered this passage preached this way. I saw myself, I remember feeling like pressed up against a door, right? Like just there was this heavy wind pushing me back against a door to leadership, to making a difference, to being an adult. And I was just under pressure. And people would tell me, well, just have faith, that door's going to open. And I'd be like, I believe that door's going to open, but meanwhile, the pressure is here, right? Like, I feel in pain today. I remember feeling a bit like I was in a subway station of life, waiting for the train to come, God's train for me, and watching trains whizzing by, sitting down as one train stopped and people got on and people got off, and just waiting for my train. And when is my train going to come? It's like hours and hours late. And certainly, when my train comes, it'll be shining and glowing and gold, and it'll have my name written on the side, right? And I went to church, and I began to hear this passage, and I began to understand that I had permission to get on any train. Get on any train you like. You don't know where you're going yet. Just get on a train. And if you get on the wrong train, get off, get on a different train. You have this freedom. You can do it. And it rung with tremendous good news for me. A tremendous amount of freedom that I felt to just try something. And I ended up volunteering at a church coffee shop. There was a church that was trying to start a coffee shop. And if you know me at all, you know the kinds of things I get excited about, the kinds of things I preach about, you know that kind of ministry is not really my jam anymore, right? That's a textbook attractional ministry. That's a try to make the church nice to get people in the doors kind of ministry. And I like incarnational ministries, going out and meeting people where they are. But, I was young and I had not yet figured that out, and I had to figure that out by doing it. And I got to try it, and I got to learn stuff. How to make an Americano, and I got to make mistakes. And I got tired spending my days doing something that I believed in. And it was that good kind of tired, the tired that matters. So different from the pressure I felt trying to do nothing, trying to be patient. And it was only when I started moving, working that coffee shop for a few months, that I got a job in something I was actually good at. And I got hired in youth ministry. I left it behind. And you relate to this. I think you've all heard a story like this. Have any of you had the I hate my job conversation? Somebody comes over for cocktails and they're just, I just hate my job's the worst. And what do you say? You say what we all say. You say, well, why don't you quit? Oh, I can't quit. I need the money. Well, have you tried looking for another job? I don't have any time. My job keeps me too busy. and you want to wring their neck, don't you? You want to be like, just do something. Change your own situation. You're in charge of your own life. They don't do it. But Johnathan, he has ambition. He has ambition without permission, and beyond that, he has no plan. He has no plan. There's a crag on one side, there's a crag on the other. Do we have any veterans in the house today? Do we have anybody who can kind of inform me about battle tactics? Because I've read books on this stuff. There's an entrenched enemy, and they have the high ground, which is not good. First of all, you don't want to be the one moving when your enemy's entrenched, right? Because they're more prepared, they've got their ammo near them, you've got nothing. You never want to give up the high ground. The text makes it very clear, Philistines have all the high ground. And then there's a choke point. right? There's like one little area where Jonathan's got to go through that they can easily defend. But he has one advantage, Johnathan and his armor bearer. He has going for him the element of surprise, right? That does not make up for losing the high ground and the entrenchment and the choke point, but he does have surprise going for him until he gives his armor bearer the plan. And what's his plan? What does your Bible say? He says to his armor bearer, all right, step one, we show ourselves to them. And we say, hey, do you want us to come up, or are you going to come down and kill us? And if they come down, then I don't know. We try to fight them, or we run away, or then we lose, basically. And if they say come up, then we'll come up, and that'll mean that the Lord is working for us. Verse 6 is amazing. He says, it may be that the Lord will act for us today. For nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few. The honesty, the realness of that. Do you hear that? It may be that the Lord will work for us today. It may be not. Right? That's the implication. This crazy plan might not work, but it might work. Let's try it. It's so different from so many of the favorite Bible verses, right? Say, be strong and courageous. The Lord will be with you wherever you go. Nothing will ever go wrong, and I'll pad you, and I'll make sure you're always going to playgrounds that have the cushy recycled foam instead of the wood chips that could hurt you. Right? It's not like that. Perhaps the Lord will work in our favor today. God will save us, says Johnathan. Maybe. Failure is an option. Failure is always an option. The Mythbusters taught me that. I was taught early on in my ministry, you know what you should do? It was a saying. Perhaps you've heard this saying. Raise your hand if you've heard it, in fact. Don't do something and ask God to bless it, but instead go and look for what God is already blessing and get behind that. Have you heard this? Anybody? Tiffany's heard it. Mark in the back's heard it. Okay, we got some. Nobody wants to admit they've heard it, but that's it's a good saying. It makes sense, and it's a good piece of advice if you absolutely, positively need to be a success. If failure is not something you can afford, if your term paper grade depends on it, then sure. Then look for something that's already a success and join it. Right? But it's also a faithless saying. And it's faithless because it holds true even if no God exists. You following me on that? Go and find what God's already blessing and get behind it. That means that do something that works and it'll work. And then credit God for that. It's a lot like another saying that I kind of hate, one of those biblical sayings that's not really in the Bible. People say, God helps those who help themselves, right? Which is really kind of synonymous with saying God doesn't help people. That the people who help themselves are helped. I get what people are trying to communicate when they say that, right? It's not dead wrong, but it sounds faithful, and it's not. It's actually the opposite of faithful to say that. And I think as a church, we've defaulted to that. We've defaulted to those types of advices. Because it's preferable. We'd rather get behind something that's a surefire success, find what God's already blessing and do that, than ask God to bless a thing and tell people God's going to bless the thing and expect God has promised you success and then see God let you down. We don't want to do that because then we feel like we've blasphemed, right? If I stand up and I say, God is absolutely going to make the theater ministry at College Park Presbyterian Church a ravishing success, and God doesn't do that, then God lied, and then I'm in trouble. But there's a third option. It's the Johnathan option, and I think we haven't even considered it, which is to say that God is a free person. And God can make choices, and we can make choices, and that we might fail. And if we do, then we try something else. And I don't think that's so bad. I don't think that's so scary if we actually look it right in the face. Johnathan succeeds against the Philistines with one sword and one follower, and there's an army of 600 that he doesn't bother to let know. And the reason he succeeds is because that's one of the two things that can happen when you try. I've succeeded a lot in ministry. I've had some really cool things that I've started that I'm proud of. Just this last weekend, I got messages from my phone, kind of encouraging reminders from Facebook of a time in seminary when I started a game group. And we got together, and it was just kind of a gamers, geeky fellowship. And now one of my friends that was in that group has gone on, and he's graduated seminary the year after me, and he's starting a kind of a replicate group, and he's looking at our old notes and figuring out how to do it. And it's really exciting. He's creating something new from something old. And that's what we call discipleship, by the way. When you do something and then somebody else does it, and teaches others to do likewise. I've started a bike repair ministry that I'm really proud of in Kansas, and a swing dance ministry. And the way that I've succeeded in all of those things is by attempting to do twice as many things, or maybe 3 times as many things, and failing at those things. Right? The coffee shop is a total failure. It didn't work. I couldn't even stick with it for more than a month. But it got me going. And then I learned, and I pivoted, and I tried something else. And you can afford to do that. You can afford to fail at things if they're small enough, right? If you're not trying to do everything all at once yet, and you're just kind of like, let's just go for it. I think we could be a church like that. I think that we are small, and I think that we can learn to be like Johnathan. Be lean and mean, and appreciate the leadership of individual people, and just try to do something good. Try to do the kind of thing that seems like God would like that thing, that's in keeping with the 10 Commandments. And I think we could do that because we've already accomplished things that are harder than that. We're doing this worship service, and this worship service is not lean and mean. A worship service is like maybe the hardest thing any church ever does. We got to get an organist ready, and we got to cool down a big room, and it's got to happen weekly, and it's a lot harder than any other kind of thing we try to do, except maybe a Christmas pageant. And yet we're doing it. So I wonder what else we could do. But in order to do it, we have to untangle some of that bad teaching. We have to untangle some of that encouragement to be more like Gideon and less like Johnathan. I don't want to be your Saul. I think there is an expectation, there should be an expectation, if you're normal, that I would be the king who would kind of lead us into battle and score the most kills and kind of win. But Saul in this passage, he couldn't do that. And I don't want to be that for you. And even when David rises, David leads in a different kind of way that's not that same image. I wonder if instead I could maybe be your armor bearer. Instead of trying to be the symbol of leadership that actually ends up slowing you down, if I could be the person who says, I'm with you. As your mind is, so is mine. If you want to try a thing, it might not be my kind of thing, it might not be my kind of passion, but I'm behind you. And if you feel like you need an armor bearer, I want to talk more. And if you feel like you might need an armor bearer, but you've got some doubts, I want to talk about them. Because most of those doubts don't really apply. The what if I fail doubt, that's usually the biggest one. I want to do a thing, but I think it might not work. All right, but if you do it simply enough and cheaply enough and illegitimately enough, right? If you don't fly the flag of, every person in your group about it, but you just say, hey, this is just me, I'm just doing a thing, then it won't matter if you fail. I think another excuse we make up for ourselves, like, I want to do a thing, but I'm too tired, or I'm too busy, or I'm too old. And I want to encourage you that this thing you want to do, if it's something that you want, it should be life-giving. It should be something that makes you happy, that makes you feel more available, that makes you feel more alive. That it's not something that takes energy from you, but it gives you energy. And then there's the question of, what if I do the wrong thing? Right? That's kind of the train question. What if I get on the wrong train? What if it leads us in the wrong direction? And that's where I just want to remind us again of the Ten Commandments. Remind us again that you know what is good and what does the Lord require of you? To do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Do something good. And as long as it's good, it's not the wrong thing. If you do something good that God doesn't want done, God will fix it. He can undo that good you did if he really needs to. But try something and see what sticks. I think you'll find that those trains turn better than you think they will. There is one excuse that I will accept, and this is a valid excuse. If you're feeling this excuse, you feel like, I don't really need an armor bearer, I don't want to do anything because I don't feel like it. Right? That's the uncle. I let go at that point. If you say, I don't feel like it, all right, you don't have to feel like it. There's grace. If you're just happy with where you are, the world needs followers. That's fine. I don't want to accept I don't feel like it in the form of I'm not good enough, or in the form of I'd love to but, because you are good enough, and if you'd love to, there is no but. But if you wouldn't love to, that's fine. But if you want to, I think it's way more fun. I think you'll grow more. I think the world will grow more. And I want to put as much support behind you as I can. So, if you're in that boat, let's get lunch.